Welcome to the New York State Seal of Biliteracy Module Series. These modules represent a collaboration between NYSSB and the Mid-State and Midwest Arborns to support schools in beginning the process of implementation. The modules are designed as a self-guiding process for individual schools or those who wish to work together in a consortium. The modules can be viewed in a sequence or individually to brush up on a particular topic. Each module consists of an agenda, a PowerPoint, and various supporting documentation and exemplars. Schools are encouraged to use these documents for their promotional materials as well as for internal and external communications. These modules are available online on the OBEWL website. For more information on starting a Seal of Biliteracy program at your school or for any questions regarding the seal, please contact Candace Black at candace.black@nyssd.gov. My name is Candace Black and I will be your guide for this module. Module 8, Completing the End-of-Year Data Form, will guide participants through the process of filling out the SEAL End-of-Year Data Form and including how to submit an error-free form. For this reason, it is primarily suited for the Seal of Biliteracy coordinator, although it is always helpful to have a second person on your team who knows how to fill out this form. The purpose of this module is to provide guidance on how to properly fill out the end-of-year data form and to maximize the accuracy of data reported to OBEWL and the state. My name is Candace Black and I am your Seal of Biliteracy contact in the Office of Bilingual Education and World Languages of the New York State Education Department, heretofore referred as OBEWL and NYSSB, respectively. For the purpose of brevity, the New York State Seal of Biliteracy will be referred to as simply the seal in this presentation. Let's start with which schools should use this form. This form is for all public New York State schools outside of the New York City area, as well as all charter and non-public schools throughout the state, including those in New York City. Non-public schools are defined as religious and independent schools. This form should not be used by public schools within the New York City Department of Education, heretofore referred as the NYCDOE Public Schools. NYCDOE Public Schools will work directly with the Division of Multilingual Learners to complete a special version of this form. NYCDOE Public Schools should contact dml@schools.nyc.gov for more information. Charter, religious, and independent schools in the New York City area should use this form as they are not considered part of the New York City Department of Education public school system. The end-of-year data form is an Excel spreadsheet that schools fill out with information on the students earning the seal and the criteria they use to meet the requirements. This form is generally submitted by the Seal of Biliteracy coordinator, heretofore referred to as the coordinator, on behalf of school or district leadership. This form must be submitted as an Excel spreadsheet attached to an email sent to OBEWL. Please do not send a link, such as a link to a Google spreadsheet, as these are not easily accessible by our staff. The end-of-year data form is the fourth in a series of forms required to be submitted to OBEWL by all schools offering the seal. Please note that these forms must be submitted annually in each year that the seal is offered. The deadline to submit the end-of-year data form is May 31st of each year. Any necessary amendments to this form are made by July 15th after all grades and scores have been received for seal candidates. Let's make an important distinction here between the end-of-year data form and the school notification form. The end-of-year data form is submitted by May 31st with the students who successfully met the requirements to earn the seal. The school notification form is submitted by December 1st and identifies all students who are possibly eligible to pursue the seal. Both forms are submitted in each year that the seal is offered. The purpose of this form is to report required seal data to OBEWL so that our office can send to participating schools the seal stickers to affix to students' diplomas and the medallions to be distributed for students to wear at graduation. Only upon the submission of the correctly completed end-of-year data form and seal request form will seal stickers and medallions be mailed to schools. The end-of-year data form is an Excel workbook that has 2 tabs or spreadsheets. Tab 1 is the end-of-year data form. This is where you will enter all of your seal data. Tab 2 is labeled Errors and is a set of double checks to ensure all data has been properly filled in. Instructions on how to use this error tab after completing the end-of-year data form will be provided at the end of this module. The end-of-year data form is divided into 3 sections: white sections for the exclusive use of the school, gray sections that auto-calculate and that cannot be edited by the user, and sections tinted in colors other than white or gray that must be filled out by schools and submitted to OBEWL. This module will go through each section that the user must complete and offer helpful tips along the way to ensure a correctly completed form. The first 3 columns are white with red text and are provided for the convenience of schools to enter in student names and/or internal student ID numbers so that it is easy for the user to identify the students. Once the form is complete, users should delete these 3 white columns so as to avoid submitting personally identifiable information, or PII. This should be done prior to submission in order to protect students' privacy. The text in these columns is red to remind users to delete this PII. The various gray sections of the form, located mostly along the bottom of the form and after a number of other tinted sections, are automatically calculated fields that serve as double checks for the user. For example, at the bottom of columns D through F, the user will see several cells including total seal candidates. As the user enters the data into the form, these gray fields automatically tally the entries. Users should double check that these sections add up to the total number of candidates and then identify any discrepancies. For instance, at the bottom of columns I and J, there are 3 possible gender options listed: female, male, and non-binary. The sum of these 3 genders should equal the total number of seal candidates. Of particular usefulness are the gray columns that follow the English and World Languages criteria sections. These gray columns automatically tally the points earned and indicate to the user whether the student has met the requirements to earn the seal. The orange section of the form is for entering district information, including the district name, the high school name, and the school beds code. Non-public schools, such as religious or independent schools, may enter the archdiocese or other name of the grouping of schools in the district name field, or they may leave it blank if appropriate. Districts with multiple high schools offering the SEAL program should submit one end-of-data year form for each high school. Please note that users should report the individual high school's beds code, not the district's beds code. If you don't know your school's beds code, you can look it up on www.data.nyssid.gov. All school beds codes are 12 digits in length, including those who start with a 0. The blue section is for entering information about the SEAL candidates, including the NYSSIS student ID number, the student's gender, the student's race, the student's ethnicity, that is, if the student identifies as Hispanic, Latino, or of Spanish origin, whether the student is a graduating senior, and if the student is of 21 years of age or less at the time the seal is awarded. Please note that in past end-of-year data forms, race and ethnicity were reported in the same field. Since a student can be of Hispanic ethnicity and also identify as one or more of the 5 federal race designations, such as white, African American, etc., we have now separated race and ethnicity. This should make it easier for schools who had to previously tease out those students who reported as Hispanic from within the racial demographics. Notice that when you hover over the categories in this spreadsheet, helpful hints are revealed. The NYSSB ID number is the identification number assigned in the New York State Student Information System. Every student in our state has a unique number of between 9 and 12 digits issued by NYSSB. Your school student information system should have this number available. If not, contact your school counselors or district data coordinator. Please note, because of the length of this number, schools will often create their own internal ID numbers. Only the official NYSSB ID number should be entered in this column. Let's look at some more helpful hints. There are 3 options for gender: female, male, and non-binary. To access the drop-down menu, click in the first blank cell to reveal a downward-facing arrow on a white background. Click the arrow to reveal the drop-down menu, and then click on the desired option for each student. There are 5 federal designations for race: American Indian or Alaska Native, Asian, Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander, Black or African American, multiracial, or white. We have learned through research conducted from the U.S. Census that while Hispanic has historically been considered an ethnicity, not a race, a significant number of Hispanics did not choose any of the 5 designations because they felt that none of those designations accurately reflected their race. In order to be respectful of all peoples, we will be using 6 options for race on the school notification form: the 5 previously mentioned, as well as Hispanic, Latino, or of Spanish origin. If a student identifies as Hispanic for their race and ethnicity, the coordinator should select Hispanic under the race column and select Yes under the ethnicity column. If a student identifies as another race but considers their ethnicity as Hispanic, the coordinator should choose the appropriate race under the race column and enter Yes under the ethnicity column. Examples would be white and Hispanic or black and Hispanic. If a student doesn't identify as Hispanic for either their race or ethnicity, the coordinator should choose the appropriate race under the race column and enter N under ethnicity. Multiracial is available for those students who identify as 2 or more races. In this next section, the user will choose Y from the drop-down menu to indicate the SEAL candidate is 21 years or less. Choose N if the student is over the age of 21. Can a student earn the SEAL if they are over 21 years of age? Yes. Why is it important to report whether a student is over the age of 21? Because when your school district uploads its yearly data to the Student Information Repository System, or SIRS, students over 21 years or older will not be reported. This will create a discrepancy between the information on the end-of-year data form and the data uploaded to SIRS. By flagging students who are over 21 years on the end-of-year data form, we can account for this discrepancy, avoiding unnecessary follow-up with the school. The pink section reports the L status of each student. These are 4 mutually exclusive categories. Students can only be one of these at a time. A current English language learner is abbreviated as L or ELL. An L is a student who by birth or ancestry speaks or understands a language other than English and who scores below a New York State designated level of proficiency on either the NYSSB or the NYSSB slot exam. A former or ever L is a student who was once an L but who has demonstrated the New York State designated level of proficiency to exit L status. A never L is a student who was never identified as an L. For the purposes of the end-of-year data form, there are 2 types of never Ls: those whose home language is English and those whose home language is other than English. A never L whose home language is English may earn the SEAL by learning another language through a course of study in school, while a never L whose home language is other than English may earn the SEAL in their home language. Use the drop-down menu to choose an L status for each student. A reminder that every student must have an L status. Please do not leave this field blank. The next section indicates whether the student has met the SEAL criteria by the date of the form or if the student is anticipated to meet the criteria by July 15th. At the time that the end-of-year data form is submitted, some students will have already met the criteria to earn the SEAL. For example, a student may earn 3 points in English by scoring an 80% or better on the English Language Arts Regents and scoring intermediate high on a culminating project. The same student may earn 3 points in a world language by scoring intermediate high on both the Apple test and a culminating project. This can all be done prior to May 31st, and these students are marked as criteria met on this form. Other students will need to wait for final grades or scores to be released before they officially meet the SEAL criteria. For example, a student may earn 3 points in English by scoring intermediate high on a culminating project and then taking an AP English exam in the spring of senior year. If the student scores a 4 or better on this exam, the 3rd point will be earned and the English criteria met. However, AP scores are generally not available until July. These students are therefore marked as anticipated on the end-of-year data form submitted by May 31st. Coordinators should consult with the student's classroom teacher and use their best judgment in determining whether a student is anticipated to meet the criteria. The school is responsible for following up with OBEWL no later than July 15th for any students who are marked as anticipated on the original end-of-year data form. Instructions on how to do this will be reviewed later in this presentation. The first TAN section lists all of the possible criteria for English proficiency. Use the pull-down menu to select an X for each criterion that the student has met or will meet. There are 3 columns that are exclusively for English language learners or ELLs. The second 1A, 1B, and 1D. The remaining columns are for all students, including ELLs. Notice that as you enter an X for these criteria, the gray cells at the end of the first TAN section automatically calculate. When the raw points column reaches 3 points, the column entitled English Criteria Met automatically changes from no to yes. The second TAN section lists all of the possible criteria for world language proficiency. This section is preceded by a green column entitled Primary World Language Other than English for the SEAL. In this column, enter the name of the world language other than English in which the student is completing the SEAL. English should never be entered into this green column. This is exclusively for languages other than English. Just as we did with the English criteria, use the pull-down menu to select an X for each criterion in the World Language section that the student has met or will meet. Notice that criterion 2C is exclusively for students enrolled in a bilingual education program, while the remaining criteria are for all students. Just as with the English criteria, notice that as you enter an X in the World Language criteria, the gray cells at the end of the second TAN section automatically calculate. When the raw points column reaches 3 points, the column entitled World Language Criteria Met automatically changes from no to yes. In addition, there is a third gray column entitled Seal of Biliteracy Criteria Met. This automatically changes from no to yes once the English and World Language criteria both reach at least 3 points, respectively. This is an excellent double check for SEAL of Biliteracy coordinators to make sure that all of your SEAL candidates have a yes in this column. If not, please go back and check the criteria that you have entered. The third and fourth TAN section should be filled out only for students who are completing the SEAL in 2 or more world languages in addition to English. For students completing the seal in only one world language, these sections should be left blank. Like the second tan section, the third and fourth ones are preceded by a green column entitled Second or Third World Language Other than English for the seal. In this column, enter the second or third language other than English in which the student is completing the seal. Just as we did with the English criteria, use the pull-down menu to select an X for the world language criteria that the student has met or will meet. Notice that as you enter an X in the world language criteria, the gray cells at the end of the third and fourth tan sections automatically calculate. When the raw points column reached 3 points, the columns entitled World Language Criteria Met automatically change from no to yes. Similar to the first and second tan sections, these sections have their own gray columns that total up the points and indicate if the world language criteria have been met. Note that the gray section at the bottom of columns D through F automatically calculate the number of students who earn the seal in each of 1, 2, and 3 world languages. The end-of-year data form allows for up to 250 seal candidates. Scroll down to the bottom of the form to find the purple section, which is for the electronic signature of the building administrator's designee. The designee can be a principal or assistant principal, a seal of biliteracy coordinator, or someone else designated by the building administrator. In most cases, it is the seal of biliteracy coordinator who fills out and submits this form, so it is sufficient that the building administrator designates the coordinator to do this on their behalf. Designees must provide their first and last names, their title, their email address, and the date the form is submitted. By entering their name on the form, the designee is signing the form electronically and attesting to the accuracy of the data as of the date of submission. Furthermore, the signature affirms that the designee has notified the superintendent or chief academic officer of the submission of this form. Finally, the designee agrees that their electronic signature is the legal equivalent of their manual signature on this form. If you only have a few seal candidates, it will be easy for you to see both the column headings and the cells in which you will enter each student's information into the end-of-year data form. If, however, you have more than 10 candidates, you may wish to split your Excel screen so that you can always see the column headings even as you add more and more seal candidates to the form. To do this, follow the following instructions with the end-of-year data form open in Excel. Locate the first row below the column headings. This should be row number 7. Click on any cell in row 7. Click on the View menu and choose Split. This will insert a thin gray bar that splits the screen horizontally. Let's now take a look at some of the most common errors that occur when filling out the end-of-year data form and how coordinators can use the gray sections to check their work prior to submission. One of the most common errors is entering text instead of using the drop-down menus. These drop-downs are designed to eliminate data entry errors such as misspellings. Coordinators should use the drop-down menus where they exist instead of entering text directly. Another common error is entering non-conforming characters such as dashes for student ID numbers. Please follow the instructions and helpful hints that are displayed when the user hovers over any given cell. In terms of omission errors, it is sometimes an occurrence that the user forgets to enter an L status or the world language in which the student is earning the seal. A reminder that all cells tinted in a color other than gray or white should be completely filled in for every student ID entered. It is best practice to avoid submitting what is called personally identifiable information, or PII. For this reason, schools are asked not to report individual student names on the end-of-year data form. Columns for these names have been provided on the form for the convenience of the coordinators as they enter the data. However, it is essential that these columns with this personally identifiable information be deleted from the copy of the form that will be submitted to OBEWL. Another common error is submitting duplicate student ID numbers. Column D, or the NYSSB number, is formatted to easily identify any duplicate student ID numbers entered. When a duplicate student ID number is entered, the cell changes from blue to red. This is a signal to the user that a duplicate number has been entered. The user should make the appropriate adjustments before submitting this form to the state. Although not frequent, another error is submitting students who have not met or are not anticipated to meet the SEAL criteria. As coordinators track student progress throughout the year, there may be students who are entered on this form who do not eventually meet the criteria to earn the SEAL. When the end-of-year data form is submitted in May, there should only be two types of students that are included on the form. Students who have met all of the criteria by the date of submission of the form, and students who are anticipated to meet all of the criteria by no later than July 15th. If a student is not anticipated to meet the SEAL criteria by July 15th, they should be removed from the form before final submission. Coordinators should pay attention to column AE, Seal of Biliteracy Criteria Met, ? For all students who are marked either criteria met or anticipated in column J, the corresponding row in column AE should say yes. If this column says no for any of these students, the coordinator should go back and verify all of the criteria marked in the tan sections. Another error is submitting students in the year in which they graduate. While juniors can conceivably complete all of the criteria to earn the SEAL, except graduating with a Regents diploma, they should only be included in the end-of-year data form in the year in which they graduate. Sometimes a student who is anticipated to graduate in June doesn't. August graduates should still be reported with June graduates of the same graduating year. When you click on the error spreadsheet, you will see 3 columns labeled Field, Calculation, and Error Code. Let's look at the orange section corresponding to the same orange section on the end-of-year data form. Before you've filled out your end-of-year data form, the Errors tab will show error codes for the fields listed, such as district name. But after you have entered the information requested in the orange form, these error codes will disappear. If an error code remains after you have filled out the end-of-year data form, this is an indication that you need to go back to the end-of-year data form to resolve this issue before submitting the form. Note that the error code lists the alphanumeric cell address which contains an error. For example, E2 is the cell address in which the district name must be entered. Let's take a look at the errors worksheet for a hypothetical end-of-year data form. We can see from the orange section that it has been correctly filled out because there are no error codes for the district name, the school name, or the school beds code. We can see from the first gray row, which is row 6, that the total number of SEAL candidates entered on the form is 17. In the next section, rows 8 and 9 labeled Seal of Biliteracy criteria met or not, we see that 16 of the 17 SEAL candidates have met the criteria. The error worksheet indicates that the number of SEAL candidates that have met the criteria must equal the total SEAL candidates. At the same time, the error message in row 8 indicates the number of students listed who have not met the SEAL criteria. These students need to be removed, or if there was an error in entry, that error must be corrected. In the last section displayed on this screen, rows 11 and 12 labeled Criteria Already Met or Anticipated, we see that there are 14 students who have already met the criteria and that 3 are anticipated. Because the sum of these two fields equals the total SEAL candidates, the errors spreadsheet indicates that these two fields are correctly filled in. The remaining error codes and messages will help guide you to make sure that all of your data triangulates and is correctly entered. Entering the data on the end-of-year data form and keeping track of all the criteria the students have met can be challenging, but we know you are up for it. OBEWL has created an end-of-year data challenge for anyone who would like to practice and test their skills. In Module 7 of the New York State Seal of Biliteracy Guidance Toolkit, available on our website, coordinators as well as the larger SEAL committee can practice with some sample student scenarios and hone their skills in determining which students have met the SEAL criteria and how to enter this on the end-of-year data form. It is essential to ensure that the school maintains a copy of the final end-of-year data form for their records. It is recommended that several people keep a copy of this, including the Seal of Biliteracy coordinator, the school counseling office, the person who manages diplomas and graduation programs, and the district data coordinator. It is the responsibility of the Seal of Biliteracy coordinator to make sure that each of these parties receives the final end-of-year data form. 3 of the 4 required forms for the Seal of Biliteracy are online forms that the coordinator fills out electronically. Remember that the end-of-year data form is an Excel spreadsheet that is emailed to OBEWL. To prepare your end-of-year data form for submission, please make sure to complete the following steps. Remember to remove any personally identifiable information by deleting the first 3 white columns with red text. Verify that the column AN, labeled Seal of Biliteracy criteria met, says yes for every student entered. Verify that all columns tinted in colors other than gray or white are filled out for each student. Verify there are no duplicate students. The formatting of the student ID column is set so that if a duplicate student ID number is entered, the cell's color will change from blue to red. This is a signal that the coordinator needs to go back to enter the information correctly. Save the file as NYSSB EOY data form -year -school name. Email the form as an attachment, do not send a link, to OBEWL docsubmit@nyssid.gov or candace.black@nyssid.gov. Who must submit an amended end-of-year data form? If all of your students met the seal criteria at the time of the original form submission, that is, you marked criteria met in column J for all students, then you do not need to submit an amended end-of-year data form. If, however, any of your students were marked as anticipated in column J because they had not yet met the seal criteria at the time of the original form submission, you must submit an amended end-of-year data form no later than July 15th. Before submitting your amended end-of-year data form, please make sure to take the following steps. Save your original end-of-year data form as amended NYSSB EOY data form -year -school name. This will ensure that the original end-of-year data form will remain intact for your records, as well as allow you to submit just the names of the students who were marked as anticipated but who have now met the criteria to earn the seal. Next, delete all students who were marked as criteria met, leaving only the anticipated students. Next, update the form with any additional criteria in the TAN section that the student met between the original submission date and July 15th. Next, change the entry in column J, criteria met or anticipated, to criteria met for those students who have now met all of the seal criteria. For any student who was anticipated to earn the seal but did not do so by July 15th, the coordinator should delete that student's line from the end-of-year data form altogether. Email the form as an attachment, do not send a link, to obewl.docsubmit@nysid.gov or candace.black@nysid.gov. OBEWL will update their records with the students who have now met the criteria and will delete those students originally marked as anticipated who did not meet the criteria. Schools who have candidates who were marked as anticipated on May 31st, but who did not eventually meet the seal criteria and therefore who did not earn the seal, will have extra seal stickers and medallions and should keep them for future years. Once all of the seals have been awarded, it is important that the data from the Seal of Biliteracy program is accurately reported. This is done in two ways: by submitting the end-of-year data form, an amended form if necessary by July 15th, and by submitting the annual graduation data to the Student Information Repository System, or SIRS, by the August deadline established by NYSSD. In particular, it is important that the total number of Seal of Biliteracy graduates from the end-of-year data form is the same as the total number reported to SIRS. To ensure that these two numbers match, it is essential that the Seal of Biliteracy coordinator communicate to both the school counselors and the district data coordinator the names and ID numbers of all graduating seniors who earned the Seal of Biliteracy. In some schools, the school counselors enter a program service code, 8312, into the school student data management system. This is then uploaded to SIRS in August. In other schools, the school counselors check a box to indicate that the student has earned the seal, and then the district data coordinator ensures that this data is uploaded to SIRS, sometimes working with the school's Regional Information Center, or RIC. In all cases, the coordinator must make sure the person entering the students who have earned the Seal of Biliteracy into SIRS has accurate information. Once the SIRS data entry window has closed in August, OBEWL will check the total number of seal earners in SIRS against the total number reported on the end-of-year data form. If the number does not match, OBEWL will contact the school to determine the correct total number of students and the reason for the discrepancy. Every school earns an accountability score each year as part of the Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA. This score is based on a variety of data, including but not limited to the number of Regents diplomas earned, the number of AP courses taken, etc. The number of students who earn the seal of biliteracy is multiplied by 2 before being entered into the formula for this accountability score, and therefore can potentially have a significantly positive impact on a school's score. This accountability score is derived from the data uploaded to the state through the Student Information Repository System, or SIRS, not from the end-of-year data form. The Office of Bilingual Education and World Languages supports 8 regional bilingual education resource networks, or ARBRNs, in the state, with 7 regional ARBRNs and 1 statewide language ARBRN, as illustrated in the color-coded map and table on this slide. As a network, the ARBRNs work in partnership with OBEWL staff to provide technical assistance and professional development to districts and schools on a wide variety of topics, including the New York State Seal of Biliteracy. Please note the contact information for the ARBRN in your region. We encourage coordinators to reach out to their local ARBRN for assistance in starting and/or maintaining their New York State Seal of Biliteracy program. If you have any questions, please feel free to share them by email to candice.black@nyssa.gov. For more information on the seal, please contact us at candice.black@nyssa.gov or via phone at 518-473-7505. We can also arrange for a virtual or in-person visit to a school to meet with your Seal of Biliteracy committee. New York City Department of Education schools should contact the Division of Multilingual Learners at dml@schools.nyc.gov. The OBEWL New York State Seal of Biliteracy website has a wealth of information on the seal and is easily accessible from the link on this PowerPoint or by visiting www.nyssa.gov and typing Seal of Biliteracy into the search bar. Every region of New York is serviced by one of 8 regional bilingual education resource networks, or ARBRNs. These organizations can provide local support for a Seal of Biliteracy program. The link for each ARBRN is listed below. New York State Language ARBRN statewide, Capital District ARBRN at Questar 3 BOCES, Hudson Valley ARBRN at SW BOCES, Long Island ARBRN at Eastern Suffolk BOCES, Mid-State ARBRN at OCM BOCES, Midwest ARBRN at Monroe 2 Orleans BOCES, New York City ARBRN at Fordham University, and ARBRN West at Erie 1 BOCES. Thank you for participating in this module. We hope this has been helpful. Please feel free to send any feedback on this module to the aforementioned email, as we are always looking to improve the end-user experience. The members of the Seal of Biliteracy Task Force listed on this slide were instrumental in contributing to and reviewing this module series. On behalf of the Office of Bilingual Education and World Languages of the New York State Education Department, the authors would like to thank them for their service.